It's time for another test.
In today's test, we're going to test if there's a difference in taste between adding all the honey or fermentable sugars up front or adding them incrementally as a step feed.
Yeah, words.
You're probably wondering, why do you guys already have brews in front of you? Well, that's a good question.
Yeah, let me answer it. It's because I screwed up and lost the very first video clip of this. But we had the audio.
Yeah.
So we listened to the audio to figure out what we did and realized it really wasn't all that much. So let me just go over what we did to prep this.
I took notes.
Right. We have 2 half-gallon containers. The point was that at the end of everything, they would both have the same amount of honey added to them. So in order to do that, what we did is we added 48 ounces of water to each. This would be all and this would be step.
And we used our favorite pitcher with the raised numbers so that way we could measure it to make sure we were exact.
Right. I did a lot of math, and it was really weird listening to that from the other side without seeing me doing anything. So I'm going to spare you all that math. Just know we did 48 ounces of water in each one, like I just said. And in all, we added 1.25 pounds of honey. It's a half gallon. That's about like adding 2.5 pounds of honey. So it should come out to like 10 to 11% ABV in the end. In the step, we only added a half pound. But the idea is we're going to add 3 more 0.25 pounds or a quarter pound additions over time.
So at the end, the volume of honey will be equal in both.
Exactly. And now I think we're caught up.
Well,
oh wait, and then I had to mix it. I couldn't do it with this side of the spattle. I had to use the spoon side of the spattle. But this is the spattle. It's a spoon, it's a paddle, it's both. You can get yours in the description below.
And now we will go back to our normally broadcast system.
Something like that, yeah. So I don't know how well you can see it here. Let me show the overhead camera. The color difference is shocking. I mean, they're completely different colors. You can almost see through the step feed one, which isn't surprising because there's a lot more honey in the all than there is in the step feed. So now we're gonna add some fermentation because as we all know, honey doesn't have all the nutrients that it needs to make a really clean, efficient fermentation. It can work, but we want this to have only one variable, and that variable being the amount of honey added at a time. And I just realized I have a half teaspoon measure, which is perfect if I was doing a 1 gallon batch. So let me go get the quarter teaspoon. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm gonna be putting the same amount of fermentation in both. Now that does create a bit of a variable, I'm aware, meaning because I'm not adding nutrients each time I add more honey to the step feed. Could that be a factor? Maybe, but I'm not going to worry about that because if I start trying to break a quarter into 4 pieces, it's not going to be very accurate. So I'd much rather add a quarter here and a quarter there and
be done with it.
We're done. I don't think that would invalidate the test, but it may actually be a difference, okay? I will admit that. So next I want to start adding our yeast.
Do we want to take a pH reading at this point, or do we want to add the yeast
Let's
first?
put everything in, because we're not going to be making any adjustments.
Okay.
We're going to take a pH reading to know the pH, but we're not actually going to change anything, which I know sounds counterintuitive. Why would you do that? It's because I know that this will work anyway. It'll still ferment. There is a certain tolerance range that is totally fine for pH. Okay, yeast. We're using SO4. Before anybody goes crazy that it's an ale yeast, yes, it's an ale yeast, but it's a solid performing ale yeast that I know will be able to ferment as much honey as we're adding to both of these. So I'm going to be adding a teaspoon of yeast to each one, which is actually a considerable amount of yeast. One thing that a few people said was that they use more yeast when it's a higher gravity and less yeast when it's a lower gravity. You can certainly do that. I'm using more than enough for each of these. So trying to keep the equalization effect out. So teaspoon of yeast in each one. That's a lot of yeast for a half gallon. Now I just need to kind of stir these up a little bit.
Do you want a chopstick?
Yeah, chopstick might be best. Let me go get it. Just trying to mix everything in. I mean, it's not going to fully mix in, and that's okay. And I did say that we're going to check the pH, and if it's off, we're not going to adjust it. But you know what? I think we might, and we'll do something interesting. I'll show you if we get to that point. And if we don't, then I'll just explain it at that point. And yes, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. What, I can?
I hope so.
Not everybody can.
Walk and chew gum?
The pat your head and rub your belly?
Yeah.
I can do that too.
Yeah, I can do that too. but that's slightly more challenging than walking in chewing gum.
It sounded funnier my way. All right, it's mixed enough.
It is what it is.
It'll dissolve. It's fine. So
I honestly don't know if Fermaid O changes pH.
no, it doesn't.
Okay.
I need a
Pipette?
Yes. You see the pipette, right? It's dripping. Why? Because everything we're using here has been sanitized in
The red bucket of sanitization!
which is just a big red bucket sitting off camera with sanitizer fluid in it at the manufacturer's suggested directions. And what I'm doing now is a pH reading. Okay, so we're just going to check the acidity levels of both of these just to see if they're in range. Super green. Rinse that out, please. Okay, we have a little bit of a difference. I would say the all is probably around like a 4.5, and the step is looking more like between 5 and 5.5. Now, I'd normally be concerned about that, except
We're going to be adding more honey, and honey is acidic, and that's why the all is more acidic than the step.
right, that's exactly what occurred here. Because this is closer to water, water being 7 pH, this is less acidic. So I'm just going to write those down because I just think it's interesting information to have.
We also know that the fermentation process itself is an acidifying process, so that alone is going to lower the pH. Raise the acidity, but lower the pH.
Okay, we have notes. Next, we're going to take our gravity readings on these, which I already can tell you about what this one should be, hopefully, because that's the one I based this all off of. It should be right around a 1.088 to 1.090, hopefully not much higher than that. For a couple of reasons. First, I don't want it to be higher, and second, I don't think I could put any more water in that container. Looks like 1.094, so it's a little higher than what I had expected, but not too bad. We are sanitizing in between each step and onto step. Step should be a lot lower. It should be something like a 1.035 to 1.040-ish. 1.040. Phase 1, complete. All that's left now is to put airlocks and lids on these guys and let them ferment.
So our intent from here on out is to come back to these once a week. We're going to take gravity readings on each of them, and we're going to continue our additions on the step. And then once we're done with the additions on the step, which we have three more additions after our original, then we're going to wait another week and take a gravity reading, and then probably wait even another week and take a final gravity reading just to make sure that.
So basically, we're going to be taking readings every week to monitor everything that's happening with these, and we'll show you that. But it's going to take at least a week or two. Well, a week before we do the next one.
So we'll see you in a week.
Like 2 seconds from now. Okay, so 1 week has gone by, and as you can see, there's some differences still. This one is the all. It's still pushing stuff up into the airlock.
Yeah.
I don't think either of these is actually done.
Nope.
But due diligence, we're going to take some readings. So on all, let me just remove its lid. If you notice, they're still on the tray. It's been on our table the whole time. We just move it around every day.
Should I sanitize this lid since it's been...
Yes, sanitize the lid, please.
All right.
And that's a good practice to get into, is when you take a lid off of something, it's been sitting in it and whatever, best to sanitize it again before you put it back on.
Particularly because this one was so full, it was pushing elements of the lees and whatnot up into the lid. And so now that I've sanitized it, it's clean and the goop has been degooped.
It's degoopified. Okay, speaking of sanitizing, that's going to need it again.
Yep.
Yes, we're sanitizing all the stuff in between too, so that all the readings come out the same. Okay.
We got some gas going on, which is
it's
not
gassy.
surprising.
I've not been able to degas these because the volumes are very high. Wow, this is a little surprising. I thought it would do much better. 1.062, and it started at 1.094. It's only moved 30 points in a whole week.
Yeah.
That's kind of surprising. Now watch. It's going to stall and ruin the whole test.
That would be apropos for our luck.
But it's okay. If it happens, it happens. Not going to get upset.
All right, I have to do a thorough degooping of the airlock because it was pushing up gunk into the airlock. So
Okay.
One moment, please.
Okay, it's degunked
It's degooped.
and refilled. Good to go. All right, so this one is the step. Now,
Oh, I didn't get that. One moment.
okay, now on to the step. So we're going to remove the lid just like we did before, and I'm going to take a reading on this one. Now, the step started at 1.040, and the idea is that this should go dry, then we add more honey to it and keep it going. So this test may take some time.
But if we look at it visually, normally one of our indicators that it's done fermenting is that it starts to clear. And this is obviously not started to clear.
Right.
So I think they are both just kind of being...
I don't know about that. It's not fully done, but I mean, it's only been a week. So that's something else to keep in mind. It's only been a week. So not everything finishes out in exactly a week. But this is very close. It looks like 1.002. I'm going to say that's close enough that we can add that extra quarter pound of honey this week.
Okay.
We'll do the first edition this week.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're going to do, just move this over a little bit. So quarter pound is 4 ounces. Okay, so we have our 4 ounces in, and now we're going to mix it up. Yeah, the spoon worked better last time. And it was just freshly sanitized, so. Because I want to take a reading after I add this too, so that I have a before and an after.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we have what it fermented to, but then
Right.
we added more honey,
Right.
so I want to know where it's at now. And we're also degassing it. So to keep the test kind of fair, I'll probably stir up the other one too. And now we'll take our gravity reading so we know our new starting point, 1.024. So my observations after 1 week are that I'm a little surprised neither of them actually finished.
Yeah.
I thought for sure with a 1.040 start, this would go totally dry in a week. It did go close. So I guess that's working. Kind of surprised only 35 points on the other one in a whole week. And with a sanitized spattle, I'm just going to kind of gently degas this at first. It doesn't seem as gassy as the other one. That's interesting. Could just be impression. I mean, there's certainly bubbles.
You can see all the bubbles coming up the side, so...
I can't get violent with this one because it's so close to the top.
So full.
It's very full. Probably should have used less liquid in both of these. Just a thought, you know, that might have made things a little bit easier.
Hindsight is 20/20 after all.
But we'll do what we can. But anyway, I'm going to degas this for a little while longer, put the lid back on. We're going to let these sit for another week. Be back with a checkup next week. Okay, so it's been one more week. It's time to take our readings. This is the all. We'll see where it's at. It was still a little bit active throughout the week. Didn't really seem to be doing a lot. And as you can see, it's not clearing. So it's probably not done yet. It does seem to be slowing down, though, a lot. That's a little worrisome because it makes this test a little bit more difficult. Looks like 1.046. So it is working, just slow, really slow. Let me dump that sample back in.
So because we know it is so gassy based on our sample, we may need to give this a swirl to try to get some of those gases out. Maybe that'll help it continue to ferment.
I tried swirling it. I'm going to do it with the baster, just mix it up, but I'm not going to like squeeze it.
I mean, I can see just right now.
There's bubbles.
There's bubbles coming up.
Definitely bubbles, but I think degassing it might be a good idea. Getting some of that other stuff up into circulation.
Of the difficulty we're having with these smaller samples is that we're so close to the rim that it makes things a little more challenging for us to mix things up.
Can you sanitize that for me,
Absolutely.
please? Okay, I stirred it up. I don't know if it's really going to do much, but it is still going, so we're not going to worry about it too much. Okay, now we're on to the step feed version. And this one was kind of active throughout the week. I can still see bubbles coming to the surface, so it's probably still going too. Let's see how dry it got, though.
An interesting observation that we had of these two brews as towards the end of fermentation, closer to now with this one, they seem to be bubbling about the same amount.
Yeah, the airlock, which I don't really give much credence to that, but it's interesting that they are bubbling at about the same rate of speed. 1.004. Now that means it went through another 20 points of gravity since last week. Does that mean we should add more honey now, or do you want to wait a week and see what happens?
Last week we were at 1.002.
We had the quarter pound. And it went to
gone down to
1.024. It's gone down to 1.004. But it's been just a week and it's still going.
Sure.
You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say let's let it go for a week and let it go fully dry before we add more. It also might give the all a chance to catch up. This is the issue with step feed. They take a long time to do. So that's why we don't do a lot of them, but it is an interesting and very valid way to make meads, wines, ciders, beers, whatever you want.
Now, do you want to give each of these a bit of a swirl?
I can stir this one up like I did with the baster.
Okay.
Just like we did the other one. I don't think the step feed is stalled at all. I think it's just, it takes a little time to ferment things through. The other one, it might be stalling slightly. Maybe. There's definitely more gases coming out of this one, but I can also stir it a little bit easier too. All right. That puts everything into suspension. Just drop that in the turbos. And we're going to put these away for one more week. We'll see you then. Okay, so we're on to week 3 of the test. What do I have on this side? All. So let's check all first because it's right in front of me. See where it's at. Last time we looked at it, it was at 1.046. It's still looking a little cloudy. I still see some bubbles coming up.
We have seen activity evidence of in both. So that is
good.
Encouraging is the word I was looking for.
Encouraging.
I don't know why that took so long to find, but
words. Difficult.
They're hard sometimes.
I don't know if you guys realize it, but we do like 5, maybe 6 parts of videos in a day.
Yeah.
So because we just started this one, it might be like difficult for us, but you're seeing this as all one thing.
Yeah.
This is weeks for us. So, all right. Oh, it's still going down.
Good.
It's going very slowly. Wow. See that? It's so hard. It was right on the verge of 1.030 to 1.032. I'm not sure which to call it as. According to Meniscus, I'm going to call it 1.030. Okay, so that's good. That means it's still going down. It went down another 16 points in a week. I'm cool with that. That works for me. Just going to put the sample back in because everything's been sanitized and they're about to get sanitized again. Okay, now on to the step feed. And this one was at 1.002 last time, and that's why we didn't add more. We wanted to see, is it going to stall or is it still working? Let's let it go totally dry before we add another step to it. So I'm hoping it went totally dry, like 1.000 or below. And it looks like it did. Wow, that's full right to the top. It's also quite gassy. Wow, 0.992. So you know what that means.
It's time for more honey.
That's right. We got another quarter pound of honey to go into that one. Okay, grab the scale, and we're going to do another quarter pound of honey into this, which is, 4 ounces. It would be like 114 or so grams for those who are metric oriented. Time to mix it in. I could, of course, just leave the honey in there and let it do its thing, but I'd rather be able to give you a reading on it at this point to know where it's at. And this is its second feeding because we started with half pound, then a quarter pound, and a quarter pound. So we only have a quarter pound left to go on this, which means we're nearing completion.
Which is good because we're nearing total
We're
volume.
nearing total volume expansion here too, yeah. Now, I am stirring this up. That changes it. That is a variable. So I'm going to stir up the all as well, just to give them equal dignity when it comes to stirrification.
I also think I'm going to clean out both of the airlocks because I am noticing a little fruit fly floating around.
Which means they're doing their job.
That's right.
The airlock, not the fruit. Oh, the
Right.
fruit flies are doing their job too, I guess. Depending on how you want to look at that.
But I'm going to wash them out really good, and then I'm going to re-sanitize them and put new, fresh Star San sanitizer in them.
All right. If you would sanitize the
will.
spattle for me, I'm going to take a reading. And we're doing so many readings because we want to see what's the progress of this as it goes. Not just, oh, look at that, step feed works better. No, let's see what it actually does throughout the whole process,
It's part of the test.
Okay, so
It's super gassy.
yeah, it really is. I would have thought mixing it would get rid of a lot of that gas.
You just got it excited.
That's looking like 1.012. So I can put our sample back in, put our airlock back on. She's going to clean those airlocks out afterwards. And let's place this back on here. But I did say I wanted to mix this guy up to be equal to that one. One thing that we noticed, I didn't say it, is that the Lee's cake in the step feed was twice as big as the Lee's cake in all. That's interesting. I don't know why it would be bigger, but it was just an oddity that we noticed. This is not nearly as gassy. I think it's releasing a lot of gas.
No,
Well, yeah, it is. Okay, I take that back.
Delayed release.
Yeah, it's definitely gassy. And the fact that it's still going, I mean, it's just going really, really slow. And to me, this is interesting because what we're seeing is the step feed is dropping to really, really dry quickly, whereas the all is going slowly. Does that mean that the yeast are being stressed and they're creating off flavors? We won't know until the end. And
that's part of the test.
That was the whole purpose of the test, to see, does it make a difference?
Now, the gas release that we saw on both of these is part of the reason why we're stirring both of them. Because if you recall, in the fermentation process, the two things that the yeasts are releasing into the brew by doing their job is the alcohol that we want and the gas that we don't want.
Right.
So because those are waste products in their minds, if we can get rid of those gases equally in both, then they might be more happy in their environment to continue their fermentation process.
Now, we say equally, roughly equally. I'm mixing this up as well as I can.
Air quote, equally.
Something that came up, some comments recently, someone thought that degassing gave them more alcohol. Now, that can be a weird way to say it. If you've had stalls or things don't ferment out fully and degassing gets it going again, then I can see where you would say that. But
Sure.
That's not actually producing more alcohol. It's just fixing a stall. It's fixing a problem. That's not really producing more alcohol.
It's creating a more pleasant environment for you yeast
Exactly.
to perhaps
It's
continue making alcohol.
It's like yeast nutrients. Adding yeast nutrients doesn't actually give you more alcohol in your brew. It just lets the yeast do what they were supposed to do in the first place. Just like degassing. Same concept. It lets the yeast do what they were supposed to do. It doesn't actually produce more. The only way to produce more alcohol is
for your yeast
more
to
fermentables.
produce more alcohol.
More fermentables. You need something to convert it to. It's a simple matter becomes matter. You know,
That's right. If this was completely dry and there was no fermentable sugars in there, it wouldn't matter if we put nutrient in there. It wouldn't matter if we degassed it. There was nothing more for the yeast to convert.
Exactly. There's only so much potential alcohol in each one of these. So adding other things that are not fermentable doesn't change the amount of potential alcohol that it can make.
So at this point, I'm going to clear out both of these airlocks, put new properly stir sand in its diluted format in these, and then we'll see you in another week.
So it's been another 2 weeks, which means it's time to take some more readings. So I think this is the all. Yes, all right there. We're going to take a reading on it. It was at 1.030, which is a little surprising that it's been as long as it's been, and it still wasn't done. That, in and of itself, is a clue to things, but not definitive proof that things don't work well.
Now, as you can see, they're still on their tray, and that's because we wanted to keep them together at all times.
Yep, they've been in the same environment the entire time.
Each time we move them, we just move the tray so that way they're together. We also have noticed some interesting bubble activity, and you may see from your point of view little tiny bubbles on the top of this airlock.
Let me show you its features.
So here you can see the little tiny collection of bubbles at the top of the airlock. Oh, there came a bubble.
Yeah, I think it's actually degassing at this point, because that is the step feed side, right?
I believe so, yeah. So the thing that we noticed is that at nighttime, when temperatures are naturally cooled ever so slightly, even though our temperatures remain pretty
72,
consistent,
73 in here.
the bubble activity would basically cease, and then during the day, perhaps when we're cooking and it gets slightly warmer because we're in the kitchen, we'd start to get some more bubbling. And that, as Brian said, it's probably just off-gassing, but that's why we're taking gravity readings again, just to make sure.
Now, something that I wanted to point out that I found interesting, the other day when I was looking at these, I did some math, and I realized that the step feed version, as of the last time that we showed it, had actually made more alcohol than the all version, because the all hadn't gone all the way down yet. This one, the step, had actually produced more alcohol already. Interesting factoid. So, something weird. The all is only at 1.020.
Okay.
which means it's not dry. It has not fermented out completely yet.
Right.
I want to say these both started at like 1.094. Yep, 1.094, and it's at 1.020 right now. So it's still not done fermenting, which is a little unusual. We normally don't have that kind of a problem with yeast or with a mead of that type, especially since we added yeast nutrients to this. We checked the pH and everything. So while at the end of the day, that may not mean a whole lot, it just means that this is going to end a little on the sweet side. It does kind of show that yeast have an easier time when they're step-fed than when they're fully fed up front.
Which I believe was part of our hypothesis going into this.
Now, something else that I want to point out, I am still seeing little bits of bubbles coming up the side
Yep.
of the step feed.
Yep.
I don't know if that means that this one is nearing completion too or not, because we do still have one more addition for this one. 1.000. I want to point something out right now. We do not have as much honey in the step as we do in the all, yet produced significantly more alcohol at this point. So let me calculate those out for you. Okay, so before I calculate that, I want to point out something too. You can see the difference in color. There's actually a difference. When I point them both towards the light equally, the color is not that drastically different, but all is still slightly more colored, a little darker. So we start at 1.094 minus 1.020 times 135. So this one is 9.99% right now. That's the all, 9.99%. Step, this one's a little more complicated. We started at 1.040. That ended at 1.002, so that's 0.038 is the difference. And then we put it up to 1.024 and it ended at 1.004, so that's another 0.02. It went to 0.992, so that's 1.004 to 992, so that would be another 0.012. And then we put it up to 1.012 and dropped it back down to 1.000. So that's another 0.012. If you didn't understand that, I actually have a video on how to do step feeds, basically just to add up all the spent points. And that means we used 82 points altogether. So times 135 gives us 11.07. So there's a whole point plus percent in ABV difference between these two, and all the honey has not been added to this one yet. So something else that's interesting about this is there is potential that we add this extra quarter pound of honey and they both finish at about the exact same final gravity. I think that's weird, but it is possible. So another quarter pound, which is 4 ounces. I hope I have 4 ounces in here. The eternal struggle of a mead maker is always having just a little tiny bit in the bottom of a bottle, and there's no way there's 4 ounces in here. The other eternal struggle of the mead maker is not having honey just go everywhere when you try to, I don't know what I'm doing either. Okay, so we got our quarter pound added. Time to get the spattle, to spoon, to paddle. It's all in one. I think I've done it in this video already. And I'm gonna mix this up. Now, it's not absolutely necessary to mix it up. I've probably said that in the other parts of this video. But for this purpose, where I want to get an accurate reading, it's very important. Another thing that's very important is I'm actually degassing this right now.
Yeah, it's actually pretty gassy.
So when I'm done, just like I did the other times, I'm going to degas the other one too equally. So that way they're both, equal terms. But so far, we don't have a result yet. But so far, it's interesting to me how much better the step feed did.
Yeah.
That's kind of really interesting. Now, we don't know what they taste like or anything like that, but
True.
The step feed fermented faster. It did. Even though it took longer adding the pieces, it actually fermented a little faster because the other one's still not done. Or it's stalled. But I don't think it's stalled. I think it's just not done yet.
It's slow.
Yep. It's taken a long time. We don't normally have meads.
Take another reading, right?
Yep. It's a little surprising how long the all is taking because we're a little over 4 weeks right now, like 4 weeks in just a couple of days. That's kind of surprising. Usually most of our meads are done in 2 to 3 weeks. So that's really surprising. And it's not overly high gravity. Some people consider anything over 1060 a high gravity. For mead, it's really not. Once we go past 1.100, that's when I start considering those to be high gravity that may require a little bit more complex measures to get them to go all the way, but 1.094 to start, we do that all the time. And I'm going to take a reading on it just so that we know where it's at today so that we can test it against itself next time. 1.022. Now, this is why I say this is interesting. What if this one only went 2 more points and this one didn't move anymore? They'd be exactly the same, which disproves the idea that it's better or different because they would come out the same, which is an interesting result.
But they'd still be different because this one would have more alcohol. It would have the same sweetness.
No, it won't.
How could it not have a higher...
You're right. You're right, it did. Which, that also brings up an interesting point. I've had people tell me that anything that goes below 1.000 shouldn't count because the potential sugars and this and that. So does that mean that the yeast were actually more effective, more efficient, and they made more alcohol out of the same amount of honey? Because they're going to have equal amounts of honey in them, so they shouldn't be different amounts of alcohol if they end the same.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's a mind bender for you. And I don't really know the answer to that one yet.
All right, so we need to degas and stir.
Yep, I just want to stir this one up. But that does actually bring up an interesting point about that, is that if you have a potential for, say, 10% alcohol, and it ferments drier than 1.000, that means you actually made more than 10% alcohol. Where'd that extra alcohol come from? Yeah. Now, I'm not of a belief that you should just not count anything below 1.000 when you add it to it. I don't know about that. I do know that all of this is very much an estimation, and that proves even more so that ABV is just an estimation. These two could be exactly the same, and we wouldn't really be able to tell. Gotta love it. So, just trying to degas this a little bit. There's really not much going on.
Yeah.
So this one is probably
done. I saw a
done.
significant amount of gas in this, but not in the which is interesting to me.
Now, normally, I would try to get this going again because I know it's nowhere near the tolerance of the yeast and all that kind of thing. But for the test purposes, I don't care. I actually want it to just do what it does because if I throw yeast hulls in this or something like that, I'm changing the paradigm of the experiment. So I don't want to do that. And at 1.020, it's probably going to be a nice drinkable brew. Sure. So I don't really have a problem with it. I wonder what we're going to do with these at the end, though, like when we're done. Probably just put them together, bottle them up, and drink them. That's what we usually do with our experiments. I'm going to say I degassed it because it just really didn't have much in it. So, what are we going to do with these now?
We're going to let them sit.
At least another week. Maybe 2. Maybe 3, depends. If I see activity still, we're going to wait. Because I want this to actually be completely done so it's as fair a test as we can possibly do. But we'll see when the time comes. It's been 1 more week. You know what that means? It's time to take another reading test. Now, all the honey has been added in both of these right now. So all we're doing now is making sure that they're done, basically. And then we're going to do a tasting just more for formality to see, are they the same? Is there any difference? That smells like a young mead. Relatively clear, but not fully. But I think they're both roughly the same. We may not even be ready for a final tasting today because this is sitting, it's very, very bubbly. Let me do a little degassing on the sample here. It's actually sitting at 1.018, which is quite a bit higher than I thought it would be. So maybe we're going to wait a week before we do an actual tasting, but let's just get both samples done and move forward. We're going to sanitize everything in between though, so that way there's no cross-contamination and no messing up our testing. And now this is the one that had all the honey added in the beginning. Interestingly enough, looks about this. Oh no, that's a little clearer actually than the other one, but not by... Yeah, it's just a touch clearer. So maybe this one is finally getting to the done point. As I recall, last time it was at 1.020. Okay, this is shocking. It is at 1.018. The same as this one.
That is very interesting.
I think it's coincidence. I cannot for the life of me believe that happened because the yeast does this thing. I don't think so. But
just for due diligence, we're going to wait another week.
Do you think we should?
I think we should. I think we should.
I do believe that both of them should go further than they did. The interesting thing is if I use the traditional ways of figuring out ABV, which means using up all the spent gravity points and then try to calculate ABV, the step feed has produced more alcohol. But has it really? Because it's the same amount of honey, therefore the same potential amount of sugars. We talked about this in the last session.
Yeah.
Same potential sugars in both, and they're both at the same gravity. That, to me, if they both finish here, says there's no difference between step feeding and
Sure.
once in this exact scenario.
But it makes me question the math.
It really does. And we've always known that the math is kind of subjective, and well, it's always an estimation, but how much of an estimation is it? I always thought it was just a couple of points. Like if we say it's 12%, it might be 10, it might be 14, but it's starting to sound like it could be more than that.
And I don't know who to inquire. Like, is that in the
I
realm of chemistry? Is that in the realm of mathematics?
At this point, I'm going to ask the audience. If anyone out there is actually an expert on this kind of topic, and I don't just mean a homebrewer, I mean somebody who is a chemist or works with alcohol for a living and understands why these numbers would vary that much, please contact me. We might have you on the show. We might do a Zoom and have you come on so that we can talk about this. Because to me, this is kind of a big deal. With so many people worried about 1 or 2% ABV difference, I'd rather know, is that something that we can even control? Or is there a way to know? Or is there some other way that we can calculate it that might be more accurate? So if anybody knows someone that does that, or if you do that, let me know in the comments below and we'll be in touch. Until then, we're going to wait another week, see how this does. It's been 48 days since we started this, and today should be it. So let's get some readings here.
You can tell by we're hopeful because we have our taster glasses out.
Yeah.
So we're going to start off by taking a gravity reading to see where we're at.
Yep. Last time they were both at 1.018.
Right.
Hopefully they're the same. I don't care if they went down or not, because that's not really what this test is about.
I just want them to be the same.
I just want them to be the same. That's all. Just same. It actually is starting to clear. That's kind of... It doesn't look clear in the jar. But in the test tube, absolutely. Doesn't look like it fermented more at all. So 1.018, which is surprising to me.
All right. Do you want to pour that in the glass?
That is our glass sample now, yes. Hopefully it all fits. I think these are 4-ounce glasses. Apparently they're 2-ounce glasses. 3.5? Something like that. I don't know. Whatever. Doesn't matter. It's not what this is about.
So I got everything re-sanitized, so that way we don't have any cross-contamination.
Right. And I just want to do a little reminder of what this test is about. Basically, it's just which one works better or faster or cleaner or has a better flavor. Is there any real substantial difference to doing a step feed versus putting it all in up front? Now, the interesting thing is we put it all in, but we didn't use an excessive amount of honey. We didn't do anything crazy to this, yet it looks as though both of them stopped. They didn't go all the way to dry, but they stopped at the same point, 1.018. I think that's coincidence. I'm not going to say that that's anything. We checked the pH on this. It was 4.5. We just did two half-gallon batches. There's a total of 1.25 pounds of honey in here. So there isn't even a lot of honey in these. That would be the equivalent of like 2.5 pounds. So like a 12% or so, which I'm going to figure out the alcohol in just a minute. I just wanted to get our samples together here. Okay, so step and all. And let's put the lid back on.
Yeah.
What I want to do now is calculate the amount of alcohol that they both created and then talk about something that I still really want somebody to tell me. So the step feed, very, very simple, started at, or I'm sorry.
The all.
The all is the simple one. So that one started at 1.094 and it ended at 1.018, which is only 76 points of gravity used up, times 135 gives us 10.26% ABV. I don't remember offhand which yeast we used, and I don't have it in my notes, but I'm pretty sure somebody out there knows, and I'll probably figure it out as I'm doing the editing and write it right about here for you. Okay, next comes the more complicated way of calculating the alcohol, and that is the step feed. It's not really complicated, but let me just go through it with you. So, we started out at 1.040. That went to 1.002, so minus 1.002. That gives us 38 points used. So I'm going to take a note on that. Then we added honey back up to 1.024. So I'm starting at 1.024 again. Forget the other numbers for a minute. So it's back up to 1.024 and went to 1.004. So that is 0.02. Then we added honey. Oh, we did not add any honey at that point. It actually went down lower. So let me correct that. So after we had 38 points, then we added honey to 1.024. That went to 1.004 and then further to 0.992. So that gives us another 32 points. Okay, you with me so far? Then we added honey to 1.012. I got two sets of notes here. 1.012, right? And that went to 1.000. So that's 0.012. And then we added honey to 1.022, and that went to 1.018 and stayed there. So that is 0.004. Now, all I have to do is add up all those numbers that I just mentioned. 0.004 plus 0.012 plus 0.032 plus 0.038. And we used 86 points versus 76 points. Yet they're at the same gravity. So if I multiply that by 135, we get 11.61%.
And so this is the logic puzzle of this particular test.
Yep.
The math seems sound and correct, but we know we used at the end
the same amount of honey, same yeast, same nutrients, everything, same ending gravity.
So
different amounts of alcohol created?
Why would the numbers be different?
Yeah. And that's where I think the estimation and calculation that we do in homebrewing falls short. That right there, we just gave the example of how it's just an estimate. But if you look, it's 1.5% away. Literally 10.26 to 11.61. It's actually not even 1.5% different. So that's within the margin of error for commercial wineries, meaderies, etc.
Which is what I was about to say.
So to me, I'm gonna err on the side of it's probably more like 10.25 to 10.5%. It's probably not that 11.6%.
Right.
Which is mind-blowing to me. But we always say, like when you talk about how much alcohol can you get from a pound of sugar or a pound of honey should give 0.035, right? Well, in a gallon. We did a gallon. Let's just do some more math just to make things even more confusing. So 0.035, these are both equivalent to 2.5 pounds times 2.5 pounds. That gives us 0.0875 used times 135, or gravity times 135 is 11.8. But we didn't use 18 points of that gravity. So 0.0875 minus 0.018, we used 69 points times 135. See, according to that, I only got 9.38% ABV. So when we say it's estimation, but even 9.3 to 11.6 is only 2%.
So it's still
within the range of... So this is why when we say it's all an estimation, and when people freak out about, oh, I need it to be 11.54% or it's not good, you don't even know if you have 13 or 11 or 9. It's basically...
It's okay.
Just look at the levels. You want like no more than say 7 or 8% in a beer or a low ABV, and then like from 7 or 8 to like 12 is moderate, and then above that is more of your higher ABV. Any more delineation than that, and please don't say, oh, 11.9 is medium and 12 is high. It's not even that. That is not what this test was about, but it was something that's been on my mind and bothers me, and I'm going to do some research in it. I might even do like a Brian I's little talk about it, because it's important.
I think the problem is that the fermentation process and the gravity readings and the density of water versus alcohol and the percentage thereof isn't a straight line.
No, it's not.
So
absolutely it's not.
Straight math isn't going to solve that problem.
But even using the better formulas that calculate for the amount of ethanol,
you're still going to have a difference
because of the numbers.
Right.
So someone actually suggested, I think I mentioned this earlier, using only down to 1.000 for calculation. They might be right, because that was closer to the, but it wasn't right anyway. It was still wrong.
But ultimately, we're still in that 2-point range.
Yeah, we're in the range. So I'm going to start just marking stuff as about this. Like this one, if I was to write it, it's about 10.
All right, so let's get to grading these guys.
All right, you want to hold them up next to each other?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to say the same.
Yeah.
They both cleared to the same. There's no difference.
They're kind of cloudy, but not terribly so.
The step is a little petulant. I see bubbles in there. But other than that, they are virtually the same. Like, my photographer's eye cannot see a difference, okay? I did a cursory smell.
Getting some youth, but not offensively so.
I get grapefruit.
Oh, yeah, yours is way stinkier than mine.
Oh, wow. The all is more pleasant smelling than the step feed.
Yep.
So maybe it did produce more alcohol, stressing the yeast.
It could also be that...
This one finished fermenting before this one did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
but
so
a week or two of age.
There's a little bit of aging and degassing because this is still petulant.
That's true. That's true.
It hasn't degassed thoroughly. So that alone could certainly cause the aroma change.
But yeah, there's definitely, I mean, this smells like mead, don't get me wrong. And it's 1.018. These are going to have a little bit of sweetness. But I definitely get grapefruit, which is not my preference.
Who am I smelling? All?
All.
Yeah, all smells a lot better.
Yeah,
and I really
all
think
smells more like honey.
I really think it's because it degassed and it had that little bit of time.
You could be right. Should I get a chopstick and stir this up to degas it?
Let's do a tasting and then maybe do that after.
Because this has been actually sitting for over a week at 1.018.
Yeah.
It did not ferment any further. Both of them were stable as of a week ago. So anyway, let's give it a taste. Certainly not unpleasant. The grapefruit that I get and the smell isn't present in the taste.
I got chapstick.
You got goop on your lips.
Chapstick. It's just chapstick.
Ooh, they taste completely different. Mm-hmm. This one I get a little bit of like a florally honey, kind of tangy, almost a cereal note in there. This one is a little more sedated.
Yeah.
But more tangy. I'm going to need more testing.
More testing is correct. All right, do you want to do the chopstick?
Yep, let me get a chopstick. There we go. You don't need to sanitize. It's going in a glass that we're going to be drinking from.
Well, I sanitized it anyway.
Out of habit, she sanitized the chopstick. It's going in a glass that we're going to be drinking the whole thing.
It's a chopstick.
See? But that just goes to prove how much we sanitize stuff. Every once in a while, somebody's like, you didn't sanitize it.
It's my job.
Freaking everything.
I got one job. It's to sanitize all the stuff.
You have lots of jobs.
I'm going to do it.
Okay, so I'm degassing briefly. Not going to go too crazy.
We honestly came into this feeling that the step feed was going to be a better process. It wasn't going to stress the yeast as much. And at this point, I'm really not getting that.
I'm not convinced. But it did make a different product. That's the funny part.
It did make a different product, but I don't know. And we gave it a full week at the same gravity reading. I think all the things that should have occurred within that week.
Okay. A little bit of youth, but decent flavor. It's not horror bad. Like, it's pretty decent. Keep in mind, it's only 48 days old.
Yeah.
These are young.
Yeah.
It's pretty decent. I would drink it as it is. The sweetness level, to me, is actually just about right. It covers up a little bit of the youth, I think. But some of those harsher notes are still coming through. Okay, I had first said they're very, very different. I don't think they're very, very different. There's more than a 10% difference, though. It's like 15, 18% different. I get a cereally kind of note on this, which I actually like. Almost like a grain feeling. I'm not sure if it's just the type of honey that we used. I don't know what honey we used. Versus the actual fermentation process. I wouldn't say that I can taste a % difference in alcohol. Mm-mm. I don't think so. I think most people probably couldn't tell 1% anyway, and I don't think we're any different for that. 2 or 3, I might be able to tell, but 1, probably not. Even in a side-by-side. Let me just do a quick side-by-side.
For me, you give me either one of those glasses, and I'm going to say, yep, that's a mead.
Okay. main difference. I get a little bit of the grapefruit flavor on the step feed. I don't on the all, but I get more of that slight bitter note towards the back that I don't get on this. That's the two main differences that I get.
All right, let me look at our notes. I'm trying to hypothesize here what the heck is going on.
This is the opposite of what I expected.
Right. And my initial thought is like, oh, okay, well, the all finished first because we weren't feeding it, and so that gave it more age, just a couple weeks. But I'm looking at the notes, and it didn't.
They both ended at about the same time. The same week. They both ended at the same gravity, because the all was at 1.020, and we sweetened the step to 1.022. The next week,
they both were at 1.018.
Well, actually, yeah, it was like a week, a little over a week.
Yeah.
They were both at 1.018 and both stayed there. So they actually finished within days of each other.
So even in that 1 week parameter, if there was, it's, like Brian said, it's just a couple of days difference. And there's no way a day of aging is going to create this difference in experiences.
This is mind-blowing.
This is really crazy.
Because the all tastes better.
It does. It does.
Now, could it be because this is a lower ABV, it's not super high? If we had step-fed these to like 18%, which wouldn't have worked in this exact case because they both stopped at 1.018.
And I think that is the point that is the biggest question mark for me.
It could be
it's
the
a beautiful
yeast.
thing.
It could be a lot of things. You know, I want to take an acid check on these two.
It's a beautiful thing that it stopped at the same thing, because then we're like, okay, we're even Steven, right? But it's weird that it stopped.
Yeah, they normally wouldn't. I want to do a pH reading on both, see if there's a difference there.
Let me grab. All right, so Brian has a new hypothesis in regards to our pH.
I think this one acidified more than that one because of the step feeding. Each time we step fed, it produced a little bit more of an acid response, and that altered the flavor.
And that is actually something I would like to research further. I have been doing little mini deep dives on specific topics for our VIPs who have had some questions, just to see more of the science, more of the specifics on certain things.
Please clean that.
And the acidification process of fermentation is one of those that I actually did a little mini research project on. And I never really thought about it, but the reason why fermentation is an acidifying process is because yeasts are creating acids as they're fermenting. So they're making...
Ethanol has a slight acidic property to it.
Yeah. I don't know. Those look pretty darn similar.
Well, we got to give them time to sit. But...
yeah.
They are, for all intents and purposes, exactly the same pH. Okay, so these are the two pH strips. Even in the camera, if you see a difference, it's not really there. It's just a difference of light coming through.
Yeah.
I mean, they are virtually identical. I don't see any difference.
And so that looks like it's a 3.
It's closer to like 3.3-ish. It's a little...
It's somewhere in between 3 and 3.5.
Yeah, it's more... Yeah. Which is a very safe preservation amount. And I think that's one of the natural processes that fermentation of fruits and honeys do, is it puts them to a state where when it finally gets there, it's probably fine to stop. But if you also think about it, that's below the pH range that we say fermentation likes to have. So it isn't entirely possible that the yeast just went, nope, it's too acidified for me.
It is possible. And that would make
Wouldn't that happen all the time when we make mead?
I don't know. See, and
this test brings up so many more questions.
It does.
But that's a good thing. One
of the questions is, why the heck can we not go to the moon when we step feed stuff? Because we never can. And I'm thinking...
By going to the moon, she means high ABV.
Yes. You have to translate Derica to English. I'm so sorry. I think that...
Keeping track of acid along the way
might be a thing. And we might have to buffer it in stages as the fermentation process is going. I've never heard of anybody doing that.
Nope.
But it's...
Grapefruit, no grapefruit on the smell. Absolutely.
And I'm still sticking to my guns that it's a gas situation because that was obviously petulant, and even though you stirred it and it's not like I can still see a little bit of bubbles on there. There's none on.
Beyond that, mouthfeel. This is richer and more viscous than this one. This one's a water. It's not watery compared to the all. It's watery.
Yeah, the all.
This is crazy how
almost
different.
Feels like it got pasteurized or.
Feels like it got mellowed for 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, this feels like an aged product. It's not.
That's just. I don't have an answer for this one. Other than, is there a difference between step feeding and just putting it all up the front?
Yeah.
Yeah, there totally is. Which one's better is hard to say. And over time, will they even out? I think they'll even out to the same. I believe so. There's only one way to know that. And that means we're going to have to put these into bottles and let them sit for a year.
Sit them over a year.
And revisit in a year.
We can do that.
To taste test that again.
We can totally do that.
And what's left, I'm probably just going to bottle and drink it. Because this is actually a pleasant mead for me. And mixed together, I think it would be really nice.
Oh, sure.
I'd enjoy it.
Okay, so during the process, we did see that the all took longer, but finishing out, it was the same amount of
They're
time.
the same. It got slow very quickly.
Right.
Yeah, because it went from 1094 to 1062 in the time that the other one went from 40 to 02. So it actually did about the same in the first beginning. But then 62 to 46, it started slowing down a lot.
Right.
46 to 30 to 20 to 18. It just slowed down very, very quickly.
But because the final result was that they took the same amount of time, I don't think that was really a benefit.
Yeah, there's no
that
benefit
it's
to step
going
feeding in that
slowing-
case. We
going
didn't get
slowing
more
down.
ABV as a result of step
No.
feeding. We didn't get a better flavor as a result of step feeding. So in my opinion, not a definitive test by any means. In our conclusion here for this exact test under these exact conditions, using all of these same parameters, yeast, honeys, and everything, the all produced a better product given the amount of effort that was put forth as well, because we had to work harder on this one to get it to do the same thing that this just did just by dropping it all in on its own.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Craziness. I would have not have guessed that.
Nope, I would have totally thought it was the other way around.
Yep.
Had I not known that I labeled these jars that you can see, I would have thought we did it backwards.
Yep.
But we absolutely did not do it backwards.
Nope.
We absolutely did not. And you've seen it through the whole video.
Yeah.
So, cool test.
Yeah.
I love stuff like this. And if somebody really understands the alcohol thing, let me know. I think it's just the error of estimation and calculation, but it's still within a margin of error of about 2% plus or minus, which is, in the US, valid. Totally fine to have. But as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.